Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the next session of the Connecticut Affordable Housing Conference. I am Amy Peltier. I'm the Coalition and Advocacy Director here at the Partnership for Strong Communities. And our Executive Director, Chelsea Ross, is supporting me. I may have other staff here helping that I don't see on screen. So if you're here, thank you. This year, the conference is here for housing. It's our opportunity to convene, collaborate, and drive meaningful change to improve and expand housing affordability, creation, choice, and stability across our state. You can join the conversation on social media at #CAHC 2024. This session, entitled All in Alliances, How to Make Real Change from the Grassroots Up and the Outside In. That's the name of our session, excuse me. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I just want to make sure that I thank our sponsors. So our presenting sponsor is the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. Our visionary sponsor is Wells Fargo. Our champion sponsors are Cohn Resnick, J. DeMille & Associates, Liberty Bank, Trinity Financial, Robinson Cole, and the Connecticut Department of Housing. We have several foundation sponsors. And thank you also to our investor sponsor. These sponsors' deep support helps us make the conference happen each year and also helps us to keep it free for everyone to attend. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few things to keep in mind. The sessions are being recorded. Please remain on mute unless a speaker asks you to unmute, or of course, unless you're speaking. If you have a technology issue, please select the chat icon on the Zoom control panel, send a chat to me, and we'll do our best to assist you. Your speakers will let us know how they want questions to be presented, but please utilize the question and answer function in the Zoom room or chat, and we'll do our best to get to those once our panelists are finished speaking and sharing their remarks. And post-session, you can complete a survey feedback back in the lobby, right with the little microphone icon, and we really appreciate that. So now I think I'm going to turn it over to you first, Ben. Is that right?
Actually, Sarah? I think it's being turned over to me, but thank you.
Okay.
So welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're all here and that you chose to attend this breakout session. As you saw on the front page, we are the All In Alliances. So today we want to share with you the work that we do and some of the tools that we use to accomplish that work. As we go through, you'll notice that each of us are going to take turns presenting. It's going to move fairly quickly, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Each time we mention a tool that we use, we're going to accompany it with a story. And that's because stories are really foundational to the work that we do. And we're going to help you to understand what the tools are as much as possible and give you access to those tools on our website that will be made available to you as well. Stories are used all the time because they convey information and they build relationships and they promote change within communities. Each of us that came today to this breakout session walked in or entered digitally with a story to tell, a story of themselves. For instance, my story in a very small nutshell is that I am first and foremost a mom and have been for 27 years. I came to the all-in work during the pandemic as a way to explore my community and to better understand the environment in which myself and my family had been living and would have to move into in the future. I stayed because the work was so gratifying and because it was relational to my restricted interest. So, and my interest is, you'll hear about it more later, but is housing for everybody. So that's the story I walked in with when I joined All In for Oxford. each of us brings our own story. And when everybody comes and brings a story to the room, it creates a story of everyone that's there, sort of a story of us. And so I want to share with you briefly the story of All In Alliances as the story of us. So you can think of All In as a bunch of allies. We are people who are locally grounded in our communities. We are neighbors. We are friends. We are also churches and organizations and businesses. And we come together because we have a common interest, and we build alliances because that's how we become more powerful, and the things that we care about most can be more effectively addressed. As we work together, we have coalesced around three primary issues. The first is that everyone in our communities deserves to have a home. And a home is a lot of things, and it's more than just a place to live, it's a place to belong. We also believe and coalesce around the fact that everyone deserves food to eat. Seems pretty basic, but it's not always the case. And lastly, we believe together that everyone in a community deserves to have a voice in the decisions that impact their lives, so that they have power themselves. All of our work is checked against those three primary goals. And we keep coming back to those goals whenever we move forward. And as new people come and join us, they realize that their concerns fit into those categories as well. So we've created together a story of us, and we're constantly welcoming new people into that story and hearing their stories as well. So today, as much as we're going to try to use the tools we're talking about. So I've shared with you a brief story of me, and we would like you to drop into the chat a brief story of yourself. I'd like you to put in there who you are, what town you're from, what role you play in regards to housing. And if Amy or whoever it is can drop up a poll onto the screen and send that poll out. We'd also like you to rate what you feel the feelings in your town are about affordable housing. 1 would be strongly opposed. 10 would be very enthusiastic. And in between, we're all different shades of, let's say, affordable housing curious. So if you could put down where you believe your town falls, then we're going to take a look at those results in just a minute. We'd also love to see those in the chat to see which town it is that you're from and what your role is in regards to housing. As people finish up that poll, wanted to share with you briefly our goals for today, what we want to include in the story of us that's going to be captured here in this breakout session. First, we really want to acknowledge the fact that community input can be problematic and has a history of being problematic when we talk about reaching our affordable housing goals. But we want to share with you stories that show that you can have a different ending to that story, that things can work well, not in spite of community input, but because of community input. And lastly, as I mentioned before, we want to teach you the tools, expose you to the tools so that you know how we go about doing this work. Thank you so much, everybody, for putting things in the chat and for answering the poll question. I think we're almost there. If you could go ahead and share the results that we have so far, that would be wonderful. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
You see them?
Yep, now I can see them. So,
Big old mountain around 4.
yep. So, mildly housing curious seems to be, but I'm thrilled that there's a 9 and an 8. No 1s. All right. So that is not bad. It's actually a little better than I expected. So terrific. And a place for us all to start from. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories in that very brief and abbreviated form. If it were a perfect world, we'd have time to listen to everybody tell a story. But we don't have that perfect world. I'm going to ask, though, that each of our panelists can share their story of self so that you can get to know them a little bit better.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Atterbury. I'm a Seymour resident, and I've been actively involved with All In for Seymour for about maybe 2.5 years now.
Thank you. And Jackie?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Vallas. I live in Guereveri, Connecticut, and I organize it with Nagatu Valley Project, which is a part all in. I realized housing was a serious problem when I have to move out of my community because I could no longer afford a place to live. When I meet Nagatu Valley Project leaders, Kina and Karimen, I learned I can work with my neighbors to make a difference in my community.
Thank you, Jackie. Joe?
Yeah, hi, my name's Joe Alling. I live in Milford and I'm on the Planning and Zoning Board here in Milford. So like a lot of your communities, Milford struggles with a legacy of exclusionary zoning practices. And when I was running for office, it became clear that affordability had to be a major focus. So I started attending All In for Milford meetings and participating as a way to learn. And it have just kept coming back since then. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Now, that's just 3 of the people, and you heard my very brief story, but I encourage you to visit the All In Alliance's website where you can browse through stories of, I believe we have a dozen different stories now of people involved with All In Alliances, how they came to be there, and what's important to them about the work that we're all doing together. As I said, stories are foundational, and for our next section of the presentation, I want to hand it over so we can start our first round of stories. Joe, I think you're up next.
I think I am up next. So yeah, ultimately we want to take action, and to take action, we need courage. And courage is something we build through community. So I'm going to start us off with the prompt. Tell a story about where you live and what is possible now that was not possible before we started organizing together. And Jackie, why don't you start us off?
Thank you. Yes, we know we are in real crisis. Sometimes we gave a little hope when I learning about Brookside Co-ops, housing in Beriberi, founded by Nagatu Valley Project, when the regular people in the community decide to get organized and find out how create a solution. Brookside includes 6 co-ops where a 4 bedrooms apartment costs less $700 a month. So that is really nice for this time. So when we organize, we can do it. Right now, we're inviting people in our community to join All In for Guereveri, based to the same ideas we use to build Brookside, the importance of people telling their stories and contribute with their ideas, because we will only make change when we will do it together. So that is one of the reasons we create All In, because we want to hear from the people suffer all these, problems. Thank you.
Kevin, why don't you share?
All right. Yeah. So since I've joined All In for Seymour, it's been great really seeing the residents getting involved with local government. One of the things that we'd like to do is have our meetings actually at town hall, because select woman gave us a room that we could meet in. And afterwards, everyone go to the town meetings right after, speak during public comment, getting comfortable introducing themselves. And it got to a point where after some of the meetings, they were starting to come up to us, asking us, who are you guys? What are you doing? And, with this relationship that we built with them, and seeing that we're active in the community and getting residents involved, we were actually able to get an affordable housing committee started in Seymour. We found that there were open seats on planning and zoning. So we got members on planning and zoning, actively working on getting members involved in economic development committee. And we even revamped the local Seymour Oxford food pantry, which is now in a much better position, new executive director, new board chair, and they're serving, I don't have the exact numbers, but significantly more people are getting food that need it that weren't getting it before.
Thanks, Kevin. So speaking for my community, which again is Milford, at planning and zoning board meetings, we now consistently have people who come and speak in support of affordable housing projects and not just against, which I think is relatively new for us. The people who don't want anything to be built, they still come too. They haven't gone anywhere. But I think we're inching our way towards having a little bit more of a representative group of people coming to meetings that actually reflects the community, because we know that the share of people who come and speak at planning and zoning board meetings is not necessarily, a perfect snapshot of the whole community. And I think that kind of change in public support and demonstrating public support has helped to kind of change some attitudes among planning and zoning board members. So, I think of this as kind of occurring in stages. So stage one is, convincing someone that we have a problem. In Milford, it's about 50% of renters and about a quarter of homeowners who are cost burdened by housing. That's a challenge. People have to move away who have lived here a long time because they can't afford to stay here. And so, we're, starting to reach a point where more and more people are admitting that there is a problem, and that's a big step for some people. But of course, we want to get people moving along to stage two. There's a problem and we should do something about it, meaning we're the right people. This is, the right place, and the time is immediately. So, planning and zoning boards help to create the situation that we're in. And so we have a special responsibility and an opportunity to do something. And we have, board members who are there. And then, we've got some people who've gone on to stage three, which is we should do something about this problem. And here's what we're going to do about it, right? Having a plan. And then stage four is actually executing the plan. So we have board members that are openly at every point along the spectrum. And I think there has been some tangible progress. So getting accessory dwelling units made available for rentals, that was All In for Milford had a huge role in that. And we've started to see some more movement. We have several board members who are really committed to proactively developing new regulations that will encourage more affordable housing in Milford. And, those are starting to gain momentum, and I think there is real progress being made. So there have always been people in support of affordable housing because so many people can't afford their housing. But, at the local level, planning and zoning boards can be quite intimidating spaces, and not everyone feels comfortable going. So I think All In's real contribution has been kind of building a community that empowers people to open up about their needs and speak up in a place where they might not otherwise feel very comfortable. So that really does make a difference, and it can change outcomes. Sarah, what do you think?
Sorry. I'm listening to you, Joe, and I'm thinking, I want to go to Milford. But my story is a little different. One of the what I'd like to talk to you about through my story is the concept of self-interest. Everybody comes not only with their own story, but with their own thing that motivates them and what drives them to want to show up and to take some kind of action. I chose to join All In during the pandemic, and I was looking for a lot of things, but mostly what drove me was a place to create or find a place that my family could belong. I had been for years immersed in the disability community, and that was by my profession. I'm a special ed teacher, and also through my family. I have 3 young adult children, all of whom have disabilities and 2 of whom are disabled. And I had spent a lot of my life trying to prepare them for joining a community and realized I hadn't spent much time trying to look at the community that they were about to join. So my self-interest is that everybody would have a place to belong and a home in which to live even after I'm gone. But my neighbors came to All In with different self-interests. Some people came with the self-interest of wanting to feed hungry people. Some came with the self-interest of acknowledging the diversity in our community and celebrating it instead of being anxious about it. Other people came with concerns about youth. Other people, so all different kinds of concerns. And what we found was that for people who their self-interest wasn't a good match, they drifted and found a better place to put their energies. And the people that stayed worked together to create really positive change. So a large number of us are focused on housing here in my town. And we have found ways to talk about housing. And that sounds really small, especially when you listen to all the things that Joe's been able to accomplish and All In for Milford's been doing. But in my town, affordable housing in particular is the third rail. You just don't talk about it. We have a checkered past with it, and people have very strong and usually negative reactions to it. But because of the work of All In, because we have created safe spaces for people to talk, because we have encouraged people to share their self-interest and share their concerns, we have gotten to the point where we had a positive and effective community conversation about affordable housing. At the last election, we had a table out as people exited the polling. They could stop and take a look at pictures of affordable housing and put stickers on the pictures they thought would match their community. And over 60 people stopped and had conversations with us about affordable housing. This is huge for my town. I also have the privilege and honor to sit on our planning and zoning board, and we're working for change in that direction as well. But just beginning the conversation for our town was a huge step forward, and I'm very excited to see what we can do next. Jackie, I think you're up next for our next round of stories.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So now we are going to our last round of stories. So we were told about a little about All In House Achieve. Now we will talking about how we did it. So here's the prompt. Tell a story about a moment when you or your neighbors use All In organizing tools to help make change. So I will go first. One of the most valuable tools for us has been when we use the story circle, because make it possible for people to feel free, express how they feel without fear, without criticism or questionings. Last month, we did the first story circle in All In Wherever, asking everywhere to share their experience about affording a place and living wherever. Everyone told stories about their struggles, and everyone recognized how much they share, regardless of age, gender, or economic status. At the end of the story circle, people were ready to get work. They asked many questions and how they can be a part of the group, what are the next steps, and about all, how we can do something together. So now we will follow up there and meeting with them one-to-one, figure it out the role for everyone they can play, and start organize together around for possible solution, just cause eviction. So right now we're working with them because, especially in Gueribere, we have a lot of Latinos, and we have a real crisis because we have a lot of homeless. So it's something like we are worried. That's why we'll do all these, meetings to the people feel comfortable to share their stories. So right now I pass to Joe.
Thank you, Jackie. So I mentioned before that not everyone feels equally comfortable and welcome speaking at or even attending a public meeting like a planning and zoning board meeting. So I think one of the challenges is, finding ways to empower people. When I was running for office, I knocked on a lot of doors, and when you meet people where they are, you realize that there are many more diverse perspectives than we might have expected. So we need to build courage, like I said before, through community, and that comes from sharing time, stories, resources, power. One of the ways that All In for Milford does this is by organizing monthly gatherings that take place at different locations like local nonprofits, churches, the library. These gatherings are often themed around an issue like housing or food insecurity, and they're really important chances for us to kind of come together and develop a deeper understanding of each other's experiences, but also identify opportunities to work together toward shared goals. So to give a more specific example, Milford has a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen, the Bethel Center. And there was a realization that All In needed to form a deeper connection with the clients who use those services. Obviously, people who are dealing with homelessness, tend to have a strong interest in housing affordability. So for what we did is for several months, we attended the centers. We have relationships with, volunteers at the center. And for several months, we attended their weekly house meetings. We would bring coffee, we would introduce ourselves, and we would get to know people who, were staying at the center, and just learning about them, but also it was not just a giving and receiving relationship, but it was really the emphasis was on kind of identifying shared interests and opportunities to work together. So rather than treating people as just recipients of charity, as real, collaborators, people who have an interest and who want to help. And I have to say that I was blown away by the amount of interest that there was in speaking up. And so many of those people we met started participating in our monthly gatherings and other events. And, during last year's municipal election, we had chances for story sharing between people who were homeless and people running for office, including the person who's now the mayor. So I think those conversations certainly had an impact on me. They affect how I approach my role on the Planning and Zoning Board. And I think overall, they really they have to be a part of how we build community in a way that fosters change, in my opinion. Kevin, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah. And I want to follow up on what you said. Community gatherings, and it was actually a community dinner, is how I discovered All In. I was invited by a friend, had no idea what it was. But being in the room with everyone, hearing everyone share their stories, very diverse group of people, all different, religious backgrounds, race, political views, but everyone was there having a great conversation. That's what made me want to learn more. And I think one of our most powerful tools are the one-on-ones. And as I said, that first meeting, I was interested, but I wanted to know more. And then it was the one-on-ones that I had with some of the, community organizers, and then some residents from Seymour. And those one-on-ones helped me understand, why we're here, right? That dinner wasn't just to feed people. It was to get people together, go into the room, kind of share their experiences. And like Sarah said about, your self-interest and why everyone was there. And one of the one-on-ones I had with Ben Fink that really kind of broke it down, because I'm used to being involved in service organizations, like, okay, you're a food bank, you're giving out food, or, you're trying to find places for people to live, and learning that this was more about, sharing power and getting everyone together, finding their self-interest, and, realizing, together we can actually, build the power to make changes that we want to see in our communities. And yet I love how everything works together with self-interest, community gatherings, the dinner, getting everyone comfortable together, then having those one-on-ones to find out, all of our self-interest and how we can, grow together. And Sarah, you were going to go next. Oh, you're on mute.
I've only been doing Zooms for how long now? Sorry. To go along with the same themes that were brought out both by Joe and Kevin and with Jackie, the idea of power. Power can be a difficult word for a lot of us. It doesn't always equate to positive energy. Oftentimes, in my life, I felt a victim of somebody else who has power. And so power wasn't thought of as a good thing. But it is not bad. And the wielding of power and how one wields it is what determines whether it's good or bad. One of the tools that we use as organizers is called a power map. And it's where we sit down and we look at a community or a situation and we map out who has power in that situation and who has power in that community. And I want to tell you a story about a particular power mapping session. And I think Ben's going to remember this one because he was there lending a hand as well. And we met in town hall and there were about 5 of us and we had the big piece of paper on the table and we were drawing circles and starting to fill things in. And one of the gentlemen who had come to the power mapping session said, "This is all well and good, but just listen to me. Just listen to me. We don't need all this. We can just do this. If you'll just hear me out." And he would speak over us and he would exert power in such a way that made each of us less than. And he was attempting to make sure that we all knew he was the expert in the room. And in a kind and yet unmistakable way, we let him know that, no, actually, we're not here to hear your idea. We're here to talk about who has the power and how we can use that information to empower each other and empower people in the community. It's not about one person having all the answers. He is, interestingly, he has grown over time. He left that meeting, and he subsequently left another meeting where he was not allowed to exercise full total power over the people that were gathered there because it's a role he's very comfortable with. But in true all-in fashion, this gentleman is an ally. He is serving on our Affordable Housing Plan Committee because as of now, we still don't have an affordable housing plan. And he has been a strong ally for us in that situation. He knows what he can do for us and he knows what he can't do, and he contributes what he can. And it's been a huge lesson in power for me. The other thing that I would like to share about the power mapping and the concept of power is that if someone else were to come in and draw a power map of our community now, you would find all in for, some of you know where I live, all in for Oxford on the power map. We are someone that other centers of power in the community look to see what we're going to say, to see how we'll react to situations, and to see what we might recommend. And when we show up in town meetings, like Joe was talking about, and Kevin and Jackie both talked about, when people show up, they're acknowledged. We don't even wear matching t-shirts, but they know who we are, and they acknowledge the power we have within the community. So power is not a bad thing. Power mapping is one of the tools that we use to help us reach the goals that we're looking for. And Kevin, I think I'm tossing things over to you next.
Yes. All right. So you guys have heard us share our experiences. Next I want to see how we can make this useful for you and want to know what questions you have for us. You can put the questions right in chat, and then I will have one of our panelists answer it. Okay. How can someone start an all-in alliance in their town? So who would like to take this one?
Okay, I'll start. Just to start an all-in alliance, one of the things, we recently held a story circle. And one of the things that we uncovered, we each shared our story, and we created at the end of this, a story of us. And what we realized as part of our story was that when we speak up and stand up for things that matter, stand up for things related to our self-interest and to the betterment of our community, people naturally gravitate to find one another, to find people who are similar in their beliefs. For instance, just starting to attend different meetings in the municipality, we found like-minded people because there were other people who were interested in what was going on. And when we started, along with some other members, live streaming them, then you see who signs up to watch your live stream of a community or a town meeting, and you find more people. And then it becomes a process of sitting down and having those one-on-one conversations and learning about everybody's self-interest. So it's an organic process. You can give it a jump start by thinking about who holds power in your community, who's already moving in these circles. Our All In started with the social justice group of a local Catholic church. So there's two different ways to work through existing organizations, and by practicing what it is you believe in, people will be drawn to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And our next question from Ellen Thompson: how do you get folks to the first community conversations or dinner? I can answer this one, at least for Seymour. Just being out in the community, right? I mean, we really talk about like grassroots, whether it was printing out flyers, going to the libraries, putting them up in churches, talking to different community leaders. Like Sarah had said, if you start going to a lot of the meetings and you're involved in different things locally, you'll start finding like-minded people. So the bare minimum, we said, hey, let's do a dinner. At least we'll be there. But then, after each one, more and more people hear about it. Spread the word more. We start building mailing lists. But in that first one, it's just really going out, putting up flyers in places that people are going to be, and just spreading the word, inviting people personally. To me, that's still, I think, the most powerful way to get someone to show up is just that personal invitation of, hey, we're having this dinner. Would you like to come? And yeah, definitely lawn signs. In general, it's usually hard for people to say no to free food. That's how I stumbled upon it. Someone invited me, hey, do you want some free dinner? And I said, absolutely. And then, fell in love with All In.
Jackie.
Yes, I would like to add something else. Something like working in here in Guareberi, we start from our family, our friends, our neighbors, and you still spread the voice. So when you beginning with your people close to you, you can express the voice, and everybody like start sharing, like, oh yes, this is a big problem. Everybody, we have something in common. Young people, like seniors people, everyone is unbelievable how much you can discover when we all together and we start like sharing the stories. So this is a good like tool. Start with our environment. Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. I have another question.
Oh,
can you tell a story about
Kevin?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, Joe had his hand up to answer the last
Oh,
question.
I was just trying to say that I could answer the next one.
Oh,
Perfect.
I don't know that I have a good story though, because that's like every meeting we have. It's easier to think. It's harder to think of a meeting where everyone comes and knows exactly what the hearing's about and what to say. But that is probably most common with anything to do with 830G, because we tend to get a lot of kind of overestimating the extent to which planning and zoning boards can exercise their own discretion. Something that has been an important learning for me, and I think for everyone else in our group, is that planning and zoning boards are bound by the regulations that they have, which means that if you have regulations that are really exclusionary, then no matter how much you might want affordable housing, you can't make it happen until you actually open up those regulations, start to make deep changes. And so that's an area where I think there's been more recognition of that among people who are interested in more housing. And that's helped to, I think, make action more targeted and have better outcomes, I guess I would say. Because yeah, it's easy to throw yourself against the wall, but but it's important to understand what the purpose of the hearing is and where are the actual opportunities to make a difference. So that's just what I had to say.
Thanks, Joe. The next question, what areas do you find you could use more support or partnership with other partners like funders, advocacy, organizations, etc.? Anyone who wants to answer this one?
Ben, don't get mad at me. Mostly in my local town, we're not looking for money. What we're looking for is open-mindedness and support and in-kind support within the community. So for instance, when you talk about local organizations, churches have community space that is not municipally owned, and that's a huge asset for us to be able to have a gathering somewhere where people can talk freely and share with one another in a safe space. Other civic organizations, we've had tremendous support from the Rotary. We've had support from our local, actually the local town government. There are aspects of it that are very supportive of us as well. So I guess being an open mind takes is the type of support that we as a local all in are looking for. But I know that financial assistance to continue to do the work is always appreciated. But as we are not a nonprofit, All In for Oxford is not a nonprofit, and we operate truly just from the community.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And yeah, something I always explain to people, because I think, oh, you're a nonprofit and, you guys probably have funding. And it's like, most of the events and things that we do, a lot of times it's just, the community members and the residents, whether, it's their time or resources. And I know for us, for All In for Seymour, we're always looking for people to partner, especially if it's an organization with a larger reach. Because like we were saying before, how do we get people to show up? How do we let people know about things? Or how do we get people into these rooms? And a lot of times it's just reaching them, reaching them where they are, whether it's out in the community. But if there's another organization that has that reach already and is already reaching people, or kind of like Sarah mentioned with the power mapping, that's kind of the point behind it, is to, help partner with them, show them the vision so they can use their power and reach to help sort of not elevate, but kind of expand our reach. There any more questions?
I think there might be a question
Last.
for me
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
here.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
It starts with Joe, so they probably want me to answer. So, yeah, so thoughts on actionable steps to make it a full stage 3. So that's having a plan and actually and taking steps to implement the plan. You don't need everyone on the board to be on the same page. So you don't have to wait for everyone to be in agreement that we need to take action. Planning, at least in Milford, we have a regulation subcommittee that proposes ideas about that's where you'd see kind of proactive regulatory changes. And there are some things being proposed now that, are gonna make some progress and then hopefully, in my opinion, get passed. The key is, I think, using all of these strategies that we talked about today. So power mapping, you may not be able to directly influence planning and zoning board members, but how about your board of alders or city council or other people involved? And then showing up to meetings, talking about the need, really stressing that you expect your elected officials to do something. And it doesn't hurt to have some ideas. If your town has an affordable housing plan, which it should, then that will have some ideas of specific steps that can be taken. In an ideal world, elected officials would be the ones, coming up with the ideas and then floating them to you. But you know, sometimes we need help. And so I think just being there, speaking up, keeping that energy on really helps to push things in a certain direction. Even if not every board member is on the same page, you can move things forward. So
All right. Thanks a lot, Joe. And then we'll pass back over to you, Sarah, to finish this out.
So thank you, everyone. This has been a real pleasure for us to be able to share with you what we've been doing, what we've accomplished, and truly this is just a snippet. I encourage you to explore the websites that that were linked to in the chat. And I know the chat will be saved along with the rest of it, I believe. So you can come back to those links again and again. And to keep this relationship going, we're also going to put a link in the chat, and we're asking you guys to follow that link and complete a brief survey for us. Give us some feedback about how this presentation and this session worked for you. Did it meet your needs? What questions you might have moving forward, and whether or not you'd like to stay in touch with us. We'd be honored to be reaching back out to you and seeing what types of power we can all build together, because it's not often we get to be around a lot of people who are as focused as this group is on promoting affordable housing, on making sure that everyone has a home where they feel safe and that they belong. So thank you, everyone. Please don't forget to follow that link to the survey, and we look forward to seeing you and speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and to the whole team here. I really appreciated all of the different perspectives from different places and how you all came to this work, but also learning about a lot of really neat tools. I was following the links and just really great tools for organizing and connecting with community. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experiences. In addition to the survey that you all have posted, we have one back in our Zoom lobby right next to the little megaphone. We would appreciate folks clicking on that. And I hope everyone can stay with us for one more session in the conference this afternoon, but closing it all out for all in. Thank you all so much, and hope to see you at our last session.